Digital SAT tips and tricks. I'm going to get right into it. So, I'm going to give you the overall tips first, and then we're going to go on to the reading and writing tips, and then the math. The overall tips I have are quite simple. So, the SAT, you need to understand that it's a standardized test and not a test where you have to debate like, oh, is this the answer, or like, did the teacher make a mistake and like accidentally put this, or is this the right answer? So you don't have to worry about that. You just have to know that there's only one answer for each question, no matter what. One answer. The second tip I have is to make a study plan with ChatGPT. AI is a pretty big thing nowadays, and I've learned to use it to help me with my SAT. What you have to do is basically just go to ChatGPT and ask it to make you a schedule. Like, you can optimize it by saying, oh, 1 hour per day. Like, what can I do for the SAT? What can I do if I want to score like this? Like, what can I do if I want to improve my score by 100 points? Simple things like that. You have to utilize College Board's resources. And the question bank that they have is the best that I found so far, where they mix like the paper SAT questions and you can search them by topic. So if you want to practice triangle questions, you can go on there, ask for triangle questions, and they will give you a whole list. And you can choose whether you want the answer and explanation right after the question. So it's like really simple like that, and you just have to utilize it. Okay, moving on to the reading and writing section. The reading and writing section has two modules, 27 questions each, and 32 minutes each. So this tip is personalized because this depends on what you're good at. So the reading section of the SAT is structured like this. So the starting is gonna have all the reading and like context clues questions, like where you have to like really pay attention to the text. And towards the end, like after question 15, most likely, is all like grammar questions. In my case, I like going from back to front of the reading section because I like to finish out the grammar questions because they're much more easier for me, and it leaves more time for me to think about the reading questions. But if you're more lenient in doing the reading section questions first, then I suggest going front to back. But I realized that going back to front really helped me save a lot of time. When I took the PSAT, I was able to like save around like 10 minutes after finishing all the questions and go back and check on all my questions. This second one is kind of a push, but like I suggest not to read the questions for the reading section. This might save like 3 seconds or something, but it really puts aside the stress. So, what you might have noticed is the reading section has a lot of repetitive questions. It doesn't really have a question where you have to pay attention to wording and like numbers like the math section. It's just straightforward. This is an example. So these two questions, question 3 and 5, I believe. So they both ask what choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or choice or phrase. This shows us that like you don't actually have to read it. Like, it's the same. It's gonna be at least there's gonna be at least like 5 questions like this or 4 questions that ask the same question. Would you rather like go to each question, read the question out loud, and then choose, or just look at the structure and then take the answer and check after you decided on an answer just in case? I realized that this saves me a lot of time because I notice when I go to each question, I just like stress read the question. But I after I stopped reading the question, I realized that I go much faster and I save more time. This tip is on conclusion questions, the ones that ask you questions like, "Oh, what does the claim give us?" Kind of those. So here's an example. So most conclusion questions, with the way that the reading passage or like paragraph is structured, they always have the word concludes, claims, or hypothesizes. So you just have to search for that word. If you're not a native speaker like me, like you just have to search for that word and then look after that word. But I do suggest going a bit for the context. So you just read that and then pay attention to the words after, and you could get your answer right. Okay, the last and final tip is rhetorical questions. These questions, this is such a big time saver because you do not need to read the notes. In this case, you can look at the notes, like they're there for you to read, but they're not really useful because in the end, what the question asks you, doesn't really have to do with like whether the answer choices are stating the right content. All you need to pay attention to is just the question and answer choice that meets the question's requirement. So if the question is asking you, I can't really see this. So if the question is asking you about, um, okay, explain this or like introduce this person, you're gonna look for the answer choice that's explaining or like introducing someone. Like let's say Ryan. Ryan is a teacher at Oxford University. You want an answer choice that is explaining the position. Moving on to the math section. The math section has 22 questions each for each module and 35 minutes each. So for the math section, what you need to understand is the questions increase in difficulty. So there's 22 questions. So as you're starting off, the questions may seem easy. And you also have to keep in mind that the test is adaptive. So the first section, if you do really well, then the second section is going to be a little more challenging. So the questions increase in difficulty, of course, because the first question that you're going to see is not going to be the same difficulty as the last question you're going to see in the same module. Just like keep in your mind, just in case if you're in question number, let's say like 20, and it seems a little too easy. Like you might have to go back and read the question and make sure you're answering the right part of the question. Another tip is to know what they're testing you on. Like I suggest practicing enough that you know what like the SAT wants you to know. So if you see a triangle question with an X in one of replacing like an angle, then you know that they're asking you for the angle. So you you'll feel confident that you can answer the question and most likely like not make mistakes. So if you see big tables on the SAT section, most people go crazy. Like I used to be like this. Like I used to be like, "Oh my gosh, it's a big table. Am I going to like struggle with this question?" But what you need to keep in mind is to stay calm. In this case, they give you a table. It seems a little intimidating at first because you see a lot of numbers. And the question just asks the frequency table summarizes the 57 data values in a data set. What is the maximum data value in the data set? So this question is kind of like offsetting because you can confuse yourself for like it asking you for the maximum value of this data set. So you might look into the number 11 because it has the highest frequency, but it's not asking you about the maximum in terms of like the slope. It's asking you just for the maximum data point, that data value. And in this table, the highest data value that we see is the number 14. So 14 is going to be the answer. So you see how simple it is, even though it's like a question number 20. You just have to like stay calm. So if you see equations and the you're not a master at equations, I suggest to just graph. You have Desmos, a Desmos calculator, which can help you graph. In this case, I'm gonna go back and like record a video, a short clip of me doing this on Desmos, but it's really simple. Even by hand, it's really simple. You can just cancel out the 3x by just adding the two equations, and y would be 6. But if, let's say, you don't know what to do, you can just go on to Desmos, put in both equations, look where both equations touch, and just find the y value of that point. So it's really simple like that. Just have to stay calm while taking the test. So for this question, I went ahead and put in the equations into the Desmos graphing calculator. And as you can see, it spits out the equation on the graph. And the point where both the equations touch is at 4, 6. And the question is asking us for the y value. And the y value in this case is 6. So that would be your answer. This final tip is more on like people who have specific calculators, because I know some people have calculators that have this function. I know I did, so it was really helpful. But it's called NSolve. I'm pretty sure a lot of calculators have this. You just have to search up like how to do it with your calculator. So it's called NSolve, and what you do with it is you take equations. So like you have equations where you have only one variable. So you just put in the equations, you make the equations equal each other, and the calculator will solve it for you. I know on some calculators much easier than other calculators. So I suggest looking into this if you really struggle with equations or like just want to get some like extra time while taking the SAT. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want an in-depth video like with formulas and like specific tips that I find helpful, then like please leave a comment so I'll look back at them and film another video. Thank you.